We'll be good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything About Hallmark. And my guest tonight, as you all know, is Janine. So we're going to say hi and we're going to get started because we have quite a bit to cover. Hello, Janine. How are you?
I'm doing great. And hi, Hearties. Good seeing you all and good being here finally.
I know. They're all out there. They already got their questions lined up for you. So why don't we just get started with how you even started the whole fan fiction?
Okay, I did not write any fiction whatsoever until about 2 years ago. And I started, it was on Saturdays and they were doing different shows on marathons for, I'm getting a little interference here.
That's okay.
Marathons for the show Monk. I'd never seen the show Monk, and it was on Hallmark Movies and Mysteries.
Yes.
So
And I
every
love
Saturday,
Monk.
oh yeah, and I'd never seen it, so I sat down and I was kind of binge watching the show and really got into it, and really fell in love with the Monk Natalie relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And when that show went through 8 seasons, and basically they decided to call it quits at its height, and quit the show. But when it ended, I wanted Monk and Natalie to get together, and they did.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it's like, I love the show. What if I write a story? So that's when I first started getting into fan fiction. And one thing that you'll note, a lot of times fan fiction is kind of a home for the disaffected. It's like, well, we didn't quite get what we wanted, so this is how I'm going to rewrite it. And there's whole genres and everything built around that. And then there's other kind of things. Obviously, I'm not a disaffected Hardy, but there's different things where people apply what they want to see or whatever. And so that started with Monk. That was in probably May of 2019. I've written 12 Monk stories on my own.
Wow.
I've written 3 stories with co-authors. That would be my friends Alex and Christina, and probably about 1,000,000 words of Monk fan fiction. So then here comes When Calls the Heart, and I am totally into Luca Beth, and I'm going to shut down. I don't know why it's not even open. So, totally into Luca Beth. I'm watching season 8. I'm loving season 8. I'm excited about what's going on. Then I'm getting a little aggravated with season 8 because it's like, what are you doing, Elizabeth? So I'm watching along with everyone else, and I'm on social media, and I decided, let's see what they're saying on Facebook. So I found the When Calls the Heart public page, and I start reading comments, and I'm seeing the 2 sides crystal clear in the comments, and that's going back and forth. And then I tuned in during the finale week. And, I'm commenting on some things, but I'm watching this back and forth, and Team Lucas is asking, no, it's got to be him. And Team Nathan's going, oh, no, it's going to be Nathan. They're not going to put her with a sleazy saloon owner and all this kind of stuff.
It's not even sleazy.
Oh, I know. So that went on. And then we're watching the show. What happened in the show happened. And the Luca Bethians got the ending that was beyond their comprehension. And I signed back on and looked at Facebook, and I'm going, okay, over here I have people doing the Snoopy happy dance, and over here I have people throwing appliances at their television sets. It was so stark and so strong of a reaction on both sides that it's like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And that's one thing that I've learned with Hardys is they're very passionate and very tenderhearted.
Yes.
As well. So, I'm kind of watching the comments for a couple days, and at the meantime, I'm trying to scope out my second fan fiction with Alex for Monk, and I'm working on the mystery elements and all stuff, but Luca Beth just keeps hitting me in the head. It's like, okay, if you were to write a story which attempts to kind of reconcile these 2 opposing forces, how would it go? And that's what started Hearts Heal Stronger. My goal at the very, very beginning was basically, if not to flip Team Nathan, because, Probably not going to do that, although all of season 8, my mother was Team Nathan until right after 8.10, and I flipped her.
Oh, okay.
So we, all season 8, we were back and forth. I'm like, no, it's Lucas. No, you're just saying that because he's handsome. Well, he is handsome, but that's not why I'm saying that. But, you know, basically try to at least get them to be a little nicer to the character.
Yes.
And see what his good qualities are. First thing I'd have to do, though, is basically try and turn Lucas into a sympathetic character for them and a sympathetic character for Nathan.
Right, right.
So that is how I started the story, and then taking it from there. The other thing that basically was behind that story is when Chris McNally made his statement saying that he'd like to see Lucas lose all his wealth.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's a good idea, but why stop there? So, I mean, you look at Lucas Bouchard, he's got looks, he's got brains, he's got money, he's got the girl, he's got charm, you know, he's the most powerful man in Hope Valley at this point, because he owns both the saloon, which is, other than the church, it's the central social section of town.
Yes.
And he owns Gallon Petroleum. And as we found out from Henry in season 6, along with Gallon Petroleum, he owns the mineral rights to most of Hope Valley. So that makes him the most powerful man in town, whether he knows it or not.
Right.
You know, he's got all of this stuff, but what if all of a sudden in one fell swoop, he lost it all? So that was the premise that I started the story with. I put the first chapter in for both Team Nathan and Team Lucas to let them know, put the end at the beginning. And there's some stuff very early on revealed. You know, it's like the story starts out at Nathan Grant's funeral. But it is many, 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 many years down the road. And the reader learns that Lucas and Elizabeth Bouchard are there, and they're mourning the death of their dearest friend of 47 years.
Yes.
And then there's some other things. But that was kind of my way to say, give them a heads up. Okay, no matter what you see here, Team Nathan, Team Lucas, things are going to be okay for your guy. Now let's see how we got there.
Yes. Which is good. And we talked, that's funny, because we talked a little bit about, or I mentioned a reverse chronology, but I wasn't talking about that far ahead. I was thinking about the new season might be something like that, but who knows? That's a little bit complicated. Who knows if it's what it is, but we could talk about that later.
Sure.
So I'm loving the story. Now, how many chapters did you say you were going to end with? How many?
It's going to be between 35 and 40. I think I've got 35 out right now. So I probably have 4 or 5 more chapters left. Okay. I was going to have about 3, but everyone wanted to have details of certain travel arrangement that Lucas and Elizabeth have. Yeah. So they want to know what happens there. So basically that's kind of forced me to come in. Okay, well then I have to write a story here that didn't exist in my head. So. Okay.
So now, is that what you're working on right now?
I am.
Okay. So
I should have a chapter in the next day. I was hoping maybe tonight, but I'll have something pretty soon.
Now, how long does it take you think, to really map it all out in your mind, and then, of course, you draft it and you edit it? How long is that process? The average, because I'm sure each chapter is a little different.
It's completely different. So, the first whole section I kind of had mapped out, and that went rather quickly. So I would probably drop a chapter every 2 or 3 days.
Wow. No, that's a lot. That's fast.
Yeah. And I typically, when I was writing Monk, it was like every day. I would sit down on my exercise bike, and it's got a desk to it, and go type and just chunk out the chapters. These chapters can be a little longer, take a little longer. It's taking me about a week maybe to drop a chapter now. And I've also employed Grammarly because I've learned how poorly I punctuate. But I'm trying to use some helps and trying to improve, as a writer.
Your writing is good. I wrote that. When the first time I ever read anything that you wrote, and it was not from the beginning, I discovered it a little later on. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was really good. And
Thank you.
that's why I was saying you should have your own stuff out there. You should when you are finished telling this story, find time to tell a totally different story. Do you have anything like that in mind for yourself?
I would like to. I need to get a good concept that I think is going to be original enough for me to run with. And
Okay.
that I've been kind of struggling with that, but
Do you think it because you have different genres here? You have like, present day mystery, and then you have historical fiction here. Do you know what genre it would be?
I will probably mix it all. I'm
Oh.
probably going to mix the two because I really, with my monk stories, I've got romance, drama, action, adventure, mystery, comedy.
Mhm.
And I've brought some of those elements into Wind Calls the Heart too, but
Mhm.
I also have a master's in history.
Yeah.
So pulling out the historical elements and everything and putting those things in there. Um,
So, did you ever hear of the show? It's a Canadian show. It's the second longest running Canadian show. The first one is Heartland, but the second one is Murdoch Mysteries. Have you ever heard of it or
I've heard the
watched
name
it?
of it, but I've never watched it.
Okay, you would love it because it's sort of like a CSI for the turn of the century.
Mm,
And it takes place in Canada, and it's all of those elements. The main character, Murdoch, he is a bit like on the spectrum, like very, like have things just so, quite
right.
little on the nerdy side, but extremely handsome. He marries a doctor, and there's some quirky, funny things, and there's a lot of seriousness to it. It's a mystery that's always being unraveled. So it sounds like something you might be writing. So you might get inspired if you check it out. It's so good. I'm loving it. It's 14, it's 1 year behind Heartland. So I think it's their 14th season, or is it their 15th? Whatever it is, it's 1 year behind Heartland. It's really good. You can get it. You used to be able to get it on Netflix, but I'm not sure. But when you have like a minute, you should watch some of it. I think it would be inspiring.
I will.
Yeah, and then I can't wait to see what you come up with because I'm going to want to read it. Now, okay, let's talk about your research. So I know you have a history degree. We can see that
Mhm.
in your little notes. So how does that help you when you're writing your story? Like, does it give you ideas, or does it just help create that? Because it's very much like I feel like I'm there because it's so historically accurate. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, just a lot of it was that I've studied was European history, but I've got American history as well, and just I know what went on during different periods. I also know that our dear little show is not the most historically accurate show in the world. We've
You're right.
we have missed the Spanish flu, we've missed World War One, and
Yes.
we've missed Prohibition.
And I was hoping that we would see a little more of this, like women getting the vote,
Mhm.
especially with that in Canada at that time. And we've got the girls coming and being a little bit more modern, like with Fiona and Faith and
Right.
even Clara. And I was hoping, so I'm wondering if maybe we'll get some of that in this new season.
We
Like,
now we did have Abigail being mayor too,
yes,
so they were a little forward thinking in some of that.
yes.
But generally speaking, it's just it's our sweet little show, and they don't really get into what's really going on in the world.
This is true, and they even, I think, when they first started, they tried the costumes to be very accurate, and then by season 3, they decided to stylize them, and that's when they brought in Barbara and they changed things up. And the same with the vehicles. I mean, I forget, is it the vehicle? Because I think you pointed that out. Is it Gowan's vehicle that's really, yeah.
Yeah, it's from the 1920s, but
Yes. And I think that's what Nate had said in one of the interviews. It's like such a gang. In my interview, he was like, it's such a gangster vehicle. They made him a little wooden Tommy gun and out of wood, and he would carry it around with him, and he took it home, which is funny.
it's so absolutely. And I had to study. I basically, a lot of things I'm picking up, like looking at stuff in Lucas's office, looking at
Yes.
all the various different details, and then also working in historical knowledge. I had a Team Nathan person contact me, and this was pretty funny. She and I have corresponded a little bit throughout the story.
Right.
And she wanted to know if I was in the medical field. And because she's an RN, and she says, what you're describing here is, so spot on. You have to be a nurse or something.
Mm-hmm.
No, I work in finance. But what I did though is there's like an open text website, and it's free. And I'm going through medical books from 1900 to 1920 to find out, okay, if this happens to somebody, how do they deal with it? What medications do they use? What are the dosages that they use? And applying that kind of stuff to, to the story. Right now, I'm going through Vogue's archive to talk about some of the fashions that I might see in Paris.
Right.
And going to apply some of that to the story.
Right.
So there's a lot of free resources. I'll also use newspapers.com. Sometimes like a phrase will come to my mind. The one that I had the other day was, if somebody has the scoop. So,
Right.
Yeah, were they using that in 1920? And so I go back and I put the date in, and I just put in the phrase. And if it pops up, it's like, okay, that was in common usage. Or I'll look at the etymology of it or whatever.
Right. I do that a lot of times, even with the food, because I'll make recipes and I'm like, well, what was really available? Was condensed milk available yet? I know that they were doing the canning, and I'll look it up and I research, and I do that too, because sometimes I want to see how historically accurate our storyline is, and sometimes it's not. It's a little off, and I guess that's the whole fun of it. Like they get to have that creative flair, and the average person doesn't always get it. But I don't know. You're into the details like I am. So, what did you glean from Lucas's office? Because it is filled with some major things. Like, is there anything that you saw in there that you're now going to be applying in your story?
I've applied different things in my story. I know basically the whole travel thing. That's so apparent in his office.
Yes.
Transportation.
Yes.
He seems to be very, very much in tune with ships and airplanes and trains.
Yes.
And the like. I think that might actually come into play possibly with the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always looking at things. I looked at, I'm sitting here thinking about, he's got like a polo poster on his wall. He's got baseball and baseball mitt. Eventually down, I expect Papa Bouchard is going to go play ball with Jack. Things like that. But there's so much you could make stories out of in that room.
There is. And did you notice, and I don't know if we had chatted about this before, on so that little blue and yellow house, they decorated the inside of the window, right? And the toys that they have in there, people are like, oh, maybe it's a store or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not a store because of how it's set up. But it has all the same toys that he has in his office.
Yes.
It had the baseball, and it has the planes and the trains. And I was like, wow, this is definitely toys for a little boy. So I was wondering, is that just background, or do you think they're going to do something with that?
I don't think that's that way by mistake. I think they're going to have to do something with that.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that it's like, basically that's got Lucas's hand on it, because that's all his stuff for a little kid.
Yes. And I was like, oh, I like this. What could happen with that possibility? So let's roll into some predictions. Let's talk about do you want to talk about your Jesse James prediction or your theory?
Yeah, that one's pretty interesting. Back in July, Peter DeLuise put out a tweet. I actually saved it over here so I could read it. He says, I used this as a reference yesterday. All will be made clear when the show airs. And it is a wanted poster for Jesse James for a bank robbery that happened in 1876.
Yes, I saw it.
Yeah, down in the lower right-hand corner, it says contact the Pinkertons Detective Agency and the Union Pacific Railroad Agency. So both of those things kind of stuck out to me. It's like, that's pretty interesting. We know from the behind the scenes that the Pinkertons are going to be very much involved. We've got Julia Spurlock, Wyman Walden's going around. Of course, people kind of, is he going to be a good guy? Is he going to be a bad guy? And I think he's a bad guy, but I think Wyman Walden's basically an opportunist, and he's going to go wherever his bread is buttered. Spurlock, I'm not sure about. I don't see him as a good guy at all, but their presence there along with that poster is kind of intriguing to me. So I did a little research on what was going on with that particular bank robbery. It was a foiled bank robbery. Jesse and Frank James and the Younger gang came along, and the Youngers are cousins of the Jameses. And then there were a few others. Clell Miller was one of them. And then there's a couple others. I think there were about 8 of them went into Northfield, Minnesota, and decided they're going to rob a bank. Well, a couple of them were in the bank and basically tried to hold it up, and the employees would not go along with them.
Right.
But that allowed the town time to realize, hey guys, get your guns. We got a bank robbery going on here. So the town went after the James gang. They killed a couple of the bandits. A couple of the townspeople got killed. The Youngers and the James brothers escaped. The Youngers got captured a short time later, but Jesse and Frank James carried on for another 6 years, eluding capture. So looking at all that, it's like, that's very interesting. Well, then I found out something even more interesting in the research, and that was there was a guy named J. Frank Dalton who shows up in the 1940s and says, I'm Jesse James. And he said, basically, the person who had gotten killed was another member of the gang. There was someone, I think, in the 1920s who came forward and says, Jesse James did not get killed. So basically, right. And he says, because Frank James would have avenged his death. So that story's out there. It was even taken seriously enough that the widow of Jesse James and his daughter got sued, I think it was like 1970, for getting money after his death.
Oh.
Yeah.
I never heard of that. Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, I got it on newspapers. I can send it to you.
Okay.
But they want the James ladies won the case, but the story is out there. So with that in mind, we got us some Pinkertons. Now the Pinkertons were very much involved with Jesse James.
Yes.
Trying to hunt him down. Basically, there was a foiled Pinkerton attack trying to capture Jesse James, and I think some innocent people got hurt, but it helped turn Jesse James into a sympathetic character for the public at that time.
That's true. That part I know. Yes.
Yep. So, but then again, there are, Pinkertons are people too, and there's various stripes of Pinkertons. Mm-hmm. We've seen Julius probably has a relative. I'm going to say he's a brother that we saw early in the series.
With Gowan. Yeah.
Yep. And tried to kill Elizabeth.
Yes.
And so if Julius is related to him, is that connected? Who do they have in the cabin?
Right. Hiding out.
Yeah. Jesse James would have been 72 years old at this time.
Right.
Anyone that was in his gang would be around that age, 60s and 70s. So they're not too old to be a part of that gang. So maybe they've come to Hope Valley. The other thing that I've wondered is with all the transportation stuff that Lucas has in his office, this 1876 is before Lucas's time, but not before his daddy's time. No,
not at all. And we don't know anything about him yet.
And I'm wondering, is Grandpa Bouchard or whatever? Yeah. I called him Peter in my story. Is Peter Bouchard? Is he in the transportation industry? And perhaps was he part of the Union Pacific Railroad at the time? And that's why they suddenly just show up in Hope Valley for some reason.
Right. So, I mean, this is all very much like plausible. It really is. It's not baseless. It's actually kind of interesting. And maybe the character of this Jesse James, maybe he's a little more polished now. He's like somehow been able to like become an upstanding businessman and they don't realize, or it could be, I don't know, they're still protecting him. I don't know. It's just
I don't
like
know.
super interesting. And I'm like so excited to see how it all connects. And I'm really excited to see how it connects with Fiona because she is
Yeah.
the only character that we know nothing. We've never met anybody from her past. Every other character that's on there, except for the part that Ben plays, Mike Hickam, but he's just becoming a character. All of the rest, somehow, some way, we've seen someone from their past. So
Mhm.
I'm excited to see what that connection is. And we know she's very much connected because even though they didn't show her face, we saw her boots and pants
Yep.
in some
Yeah.
scenes, right? Right.
Yes, definitely.
So something's going to go. What did you think went kaboom?
Oh
What
my
do you
word.
think?
I don't know. It's either every single behind the scenes that they showed after the kaboom. We saw a fire wagon in the street. And that was when that
Yeah,
picture was released. I'm like, what's that red thing out there? And I immediately zoomed in. I'm like,
it's a fire wagon.
yeah, is the saloon on fire?
Something was.
Yeah, well, it's all the light. There's like orange light coming from the direction of the saloon, but I can't tell. They don't ever show the doorway, and they don't show that road that runs in between the dress
Right.
shop
Right.
and the saloon. So I don't know. At first, I thought it could be cars, but we've seen the cars.
Yeah.
But if they're shooting out of sequence, who knows?
Right.
Um, I I'm very intrigued by the last behind the scenes we've seen. I'm intrigued by Lucas's dress code. All of a sudden,
Yeah. Very
I'm
casual, sleeves
extremely
rolled
casual,
up. Mm-hmm.
extremely casual, and I'm intrigued by the behind the scenes that has Elizabeth standing in the door of her row house at
Yes.
nighttime, and we don't know who the man is.
Mm-mm.
I mean, we were analyzing everything possible, but even the tape markers that are on the ground. It's like, well, whose
Yep.
is that?
Yes.
Trying to figure this stuff out. They've thrown out enough to send our brain spinning, but not enough for us to totally figure it out.
And we do know that I was say Gowan, but Martin, well, it's still the wrong name. You know who I mean. Henry and Lucas, for some reason, they're in the well, we say it's the court, but it's really not. It's the judge's chambers, but that's also the mayor's chamber. And I'm like, what is? I really do think Lee wins, but is it in the beginning of the storyline or at the end? And is he going to have to share it with Bill? Because you know how Bill wouldn't give up the jail for when Nathan first came. He wouldn't even move his desk
Right.
and he had to sit on the other side. And
Yep.
I'm wondering if he's going to be like that with the whole mayor's office. And then I think that would add some funny like comedic
Oh yeah.
flair. But then again, maybe they're working together. That's why they're all there together all of the time. That's just a thought that
It
I
could
have.
be. It
Yeah.
could be the thing that Martin Cummins shared, where the male stand-in, is standing at the door. First, I thought, well, that's Lucas, but it could be, if he's a male stand-in for all of them, could be Henry, could be anybody. Um, I don't know. The feeling that I got on that one is like Lucas is almost showing up to a
Yes.
court scene.
Yes, because he was walking in. He was dressed up too. He was
Yes, he
dressed
was.
nice. Yeah.
And
So I'm like,
after that pick, though, he's not dressed up.
no. And then it's funny because you'll see him in that casual wear, and then you see him all in a suit, and then you see him back in that casual wear, and he looked like a hot mess, like his hair was
Yeah,
disheveled, and I'm like, oh, this has got to be out of sequence, which is fine. But like, I don't know, like it's just so exciting. I can't like
I
wait
know.
to see how it all unfolds. I know that we must be hitting on certain things because it piqued the interest of Peter DeLuise. Like he checks in to see what we're predicting and he sends stuff and he says stuff. So I will crack up if we're predicting and they're thinking we have the scripts or something, which we don't. Now, do you have a wish list? Oh, before that, tell me about that picture with Nathan and his mustache and his soul patch, and he's hanging off the piece of furniture. What do you think's going on with that?
I have no earthly idea, honestly, but it was what caught. I immediately start looking at background things. to me, it feels like Nathan's gone undercover for something.
I do too. I've been saying that.
But the Pinkertons know who he is. He's been right there at the cabin with both of them. Walden knows who he is. So would it be something, I don't know if there's a separate case going on. We know somebody gets in a paddy wagon.
Yes.
And gets taken away. Is that associated? Or maybe, I've even thought, with Wyman Walden being a stooge, or being not a stooge, opportunist.
Yes.
He could, okay, I'll play ball with you because he's not going to go down for somebody that,
yes.
So maybe he would be the mole. That's the word I was looking for. Be a mole in the organization, maybe. Don't know.
That's true. And the other thing too that I was thinking is he could be undercover in a way that he's at the factory. You know what I mean? Not everybody would know him at the factory or on the outskirts of town. And if not, maybe it's someone who's a family member that looks like supposed to look quite a bit like him. Who knows? He could have not been in full costume. He could still have a wig, a hat. There could be so many things, and we only saw a piece. And what makes it so intriguing is that it was late at night for me here. For them, it probably was closer to midnight, but it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And Martin posted it, and then he had to take it down. Now, once something's up, it's people hop on that. And it was on his Instagram account. And I'm like, oh, he got in trouble for that probably. And then he had to take it down. Now we're all over it. So,
well, and if they're shooting out a sequence, it could be anything. It could be. Maybe Nathan did something early in the season, or it's going to come late in the season.
Yes. Who knows? But it's fun. It's fun to speculate. Do you have a wish list? Is there something you're really wanting to see in season 10? Here's me, 10, season 9.
I want to see season 10 too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I would say, aside from the obvious, I definitely want an engagement in that season. I want to see some wonderfully romantic scenes and some funny scenes between Lucas and little Jack.
Yes. Yes.
And I want to see a friendship starting to form between Lucas and Nathan. Because I think the respect is there for both men.
It is.
I think getting the triangle out of the way will draw them closer because both of them recognize, hey, down deep, it really is a good guy here.
Yes.
So putting them on the same side, and that's Hope Valley too.
Yes.
It's all about redemption and coming together and all these.
Absolutely. And I say that, and then people are like, oh, no, that's not happening. They get mad. And I'm like, okay. But listen, they already set it up. Brian Bird even talked about it. So it's going to happen. And Kathy Watkins, who pops on, she might even be on, and she'll do we'll analyze scenes and things. I'm sorry. She says she really thinks that they're going to be super close. And she expects them to be like in each other's weddings or something. That's what she's saying.
If Henry is not Lucas's best man, I expect it to be Nathan.
Okay, that I agree with you on this. I do. So let's answer some of these questions here. What do we have? You can see them too, right?
Yes.
All right, let's go. What do we have? Comments, questions. Let me move up. I'll go all the way to the beginning and come down. Let's see. Oh, Janice was asking, I'm going to pop this up real fast. So Janice wanted to know, where do you see all these behind the scene things?
Everywhere. They post them on Twitter. They'll post them on Instagram. A lot of times I will see something someone else has seen, and it's a name that I don't know, and I find out it's one of the technical people.
Yes.
So I'll start following them. Nate has been really good to talk to and answer questions. He's a real great spokesperson for the show. But there's, it's coming basically from social media. Peter DeLuise will share things. The actors will share things, and it's just follow their accounts.
Peter shares quite a bit, but I love when the actors share because sometimes they make accidents happen, and that's how we get like a little bit more than we're supposed to.
Yes.
Oh, this is funny. Karen saying, it's an interesting thinking of Natalie and Monk together. Really love both of your creations. I'm actually at a restaurant in Green Bay with my daughter, a casual one. Packers won today, so everyone is happy, and
Yeah.
she's tuning in, so she's that dedicated.
Yeah, Tony would be happy if the Packers won, but Tony Shalhoub. Yeah, that's kind of what you find on Monk right now are the Natalie Monk shippers. They wanted to see those characters together, and we bring them together various ways. With my first Monk story was Mr. Monk Takes the Next Step.
Oh.
And that one, because Monk, if you really analyze the plots and everything, some of them are very improbable, but they make them work. So that kind of taught me as a writer very early on, if I can describe it and I can imagine it and sell it, basically it can happen. Doesn't matter if it's probable or not. So Mr. Monk Takes the Next Step. Adrian Monk goes to the moon.
Oh, really?
Literally.
Oh.
So you can kind of see a big difference in my writing at the time. But yeah, it taught me, don't worry about taking chances with your script. And obviously in Hearts Heal Stronger, I take a very big chance at the very beginning and got very different reactions. Team Nathan did become very sympathetic right from the get-go.
Which is a good thing. That's
Absolutely.
what you wanted.
That was absolutely what I wanted. And one person said, "You've made, I no longer dislike Lucas. Thank you." And it's like, yes, but then I've got Team Lucas, who I have several people who basically stopped reading the story very early on, but then once they got back into it and they love the story. But it's not an easy, I warn anyone who is Team Lucas, if you start reading my story, the first 10 chapters are going to be hard.
But it's okay because I didn't find it hard. I felt like it was I couldn't wait to see what was happening next. You kind of told us in the beginning where it was eventually going to go. So I like having that in the back of my mind. And it makes
I had several people though tell me I was sobbing. I couldn't watch it. That's what, people are very tenderhearted and they love these characters and they want them treated well.
Right. And I think you're doing a good job, though. I mean, I like it because, like I said, very detailed. The plot flows. So I'm excited to see what happens next. And the dialogue is real and authentic. That's really not easy to do.
Well, one thing I also made a conscious effort. I don't want to, I am Team Lucas. I don't want to destroy Nathan Grant's character.
No. Absolutely not.
I want both Nathan and Lucas to have happy endings. And when I'm choosing the person that Nathan ends up with, I did a lot of research around her. I wanted her to be a worthy person for Nathan who would be a good fit for him.
And I agree with that because people will say, "Oh, I'm a person that is against like the character of Nathan." I'm like, first of all, he's a character. I love his character. He just wasn't written for Elizabeth, and I could see that. And I could give you 1,001 things that I saw, and just his maturity level even. And that doesn't mean he's a bad guy. I'm excited for this season because they promised he was going to have a great storyline, and I'm like, oh my goodness, something different than him being in love with Elizabeth.
Yeah, there's more to Nathan Grant than Elizabeth.
Yes, exactly. Like he's got a whole big. If it wasn't for Allie, he wouldn't have really had much of a storyline, We get little bits and pieces of his adventures as a Mountie, but I'm really hoping we see way more of him as a Mountie.
Right. I think I agree 100%.
We saw more Bill being a Mountie than we saw Nathan being a Mountie, Arlene says, I know how Janine felt with frustration in TV shows not fulfilling fan character development. When McCloud's daughter killed off Claire, I was so devastated after she finally got her true love, Alex. What is this from? What am I missing?
I don't know. I don't know which show that is.
Clouds? I'm not sure either. It must just be a story. The name sounds familiar.
Well, yeah, and it's very common, if you're looking at fan fiction, and Monk was like a decade ago. So it's a much less active, but people are still writing what they wanted to see. People connect with characters. If it's good writing, people are going to connect with characters. When Calls the Heart started out, the triangle wanting to create two worthy suitors for Elizabeth. Now, sitting from the vantage point I am today, I personally think that Lucas's main competition was Jack and not Nathan, because they never really let Nathan and Elizabeth make the connection. You didn't see Nathan connecting with her dreams. You saw a lot of, you did see a few flirtatious moments, but not a lot. They were mainly around Allie, and there were some light moments, there were some heavy moments. I think one of the moments where Elizabeth chose to dance with Lucas, and she turns and she sees Nathan in the doorway, I feel like that was transference.
So do I. I didn't think it. Yes, I thought like, oh, she felt guilty, and she was yes.
And it was like, basically, there's the Mountie looking at you. What are you doing with another man?
Because she really chose him. She sought him out, chose him. And when I saw that scene, I was like, oh yeah. And then I was mad that it took even longer. I'm like, oh, this is taking too long, because it took too long for her to marry Jack. And then once she married Jack, then he dies. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh, I know. That 4 episodes later, what?
I'm like, I know. This is just a nice comment from you for you. It says, I never read fan fiction until Luca Beth, and I now read yours and many others.
Wonderful. We have some really great fanfics there. One of the ones that is just wrapping up is Cindy's After the Kiss. You'll see her on fanfiction, Sindie.
Okay.
Really great stuff. But if you go to look at my fan fiction, you click on my name, you'll see, if you're a Luca Beth fan, you're going to see a different list of, different favorites, favorite authors, favorite stories. And there's a lot in there. We are far less populated, though, than the Team Nathan group, because almost immediately after season 8, it was like, we even have one author, it's like, better than the season 8 writers is the screen name. It's rewriting what they wanted to see.
Right.
And there's a lot of those that kind of came out immediately. But there's a good representation for the Luca Beth crowd, and it's a happy crowd. And I don't see, it's like, I see them from different spots in time too. So one of them, I think, starts at the end of season 7, and they didn't like that ending. But they're not trying to hurt Nathan or anything. I think there's only been one that kind of portrays Nathan in a negative light at all, and it's almost an alternate. Well, it is an alternate universe.
Okay, that's really different.
Yeah, it's the same world, the same time frame and everything, but Nathan comes to Hope Valley in a different context. I think there's probably going to be redemption for him at some point, but he's a little gruff.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, I recommend all the Luca Beth ones. But so yeah, I'm happy to hear people are reading more fan fiction. It's good exercise, and it's also good community to be a part of.
It is. You make more connections that way, and then you realize you pop up and you see each other on other fan pages, which is nice. And it's fun to have the same kind of passion. Arlene also said something about the honeymoon. Yes, the honeymoon without Jack, definitely a must do. And returning to Hope Valley and moving in together, life as a couple and their adjustments. But that, I think, is season 10. That is not season 9.
Yeah. And that's the kind of stuff that gets me in trouble in closing this. I had like 3 chapters left, and now it's like, oh, absolutely. Plans, though, what I would plan on doing, and I've talked to you about this in terms of where I see a series. It won't be as long as the Monk series, because I've set in mind I wanted to do something that are the Bouchards and Grants through the decades.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah, so
like the next story would pick up towards the end of the 20s, the beginning of the 30s, and you get the Great Depression and all these things. How does that affect our new industrialized town?
Yes.
And how does it affect crime and all these you can get all sorts of things. Then I was anxious, and still am, to write the World War II one. Now we've got grandparents, and little Jack is now going into the military.
Oh.
And Yeah, Nathan has a son going into the military. So just I have these kind of things, little seeds of where I'm going with the series worked out.
Okay.
But anyway,
It might take a while, but that's okay. We will love it. We will be there to read it. Cheryl has a comment. She says, "Hi Roxanne and Janine. I love your fanfic. Yes, I cried. Well, sobbed actually, but I kept going and loved every chapter." So that's just more of what you said was happening in the beginning. Oh, all right. I'm just going through, just saying, people saying hi, that kind of
people
thing.
have been so supportive.
That's
And
so
actually with
nice.
both sides. Both sides have been very supportive on this. I've had one review that was semi-negative. It was about half good, half bad, and like she reversed herself the next review. So it's been very good.
That's good. And we're going to keep reading, and we're excited because you said the next chapter is coming out in a few days.
Yeah, hopefully, I don't know if it'll be tonight or not, but it could be maybe tomorrow or Tuesday at the latest.
Well, we'll give you a break because you were on tonight. We won't expect it. This has been lovely. I thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
You'll have to come back on. So Kathy and I, we plan on after the episodes air, when in real time, when they come on in for season 9, we're hoping right at the end of February, we're going to like review scenes and stuff. You're going to have to come on and give us your thoughts too and join us.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, before I close out and say goodnight to everyone, I promised that I would announce the winner. And the winner is Madeline R. You will be getting a notification, and this book will be coming your way. We'll just check your email, and I'll give you all the details. So let's see. I'm not quite sure exactly who my next guest is going to be because I might have to shift things around, but I'm going to make an announcement probably on Tuesday because we have one of the actors from When Calls the Heart will be joining, and we're going to discuss, I'm not telling you anybody if it's a male or a female yet, but we're doing some kind of like a campaign, and the actor supports the campaign and answer some of our questions, and we have an activity planned. So just in the next few days, I'll make those announcements. We kind of ironing out the time details, I guess. So that'll be exciting.
Cool.
You'll have to join in. All right, Janine, thank you. You don't leave me. Don't leave me yet. Let me say goodnight, and we'll say goodnight to everyone, and then I'll shut down, and then we could say goodbye in the studio. Okay. All right, everyone. Good night. Thank you for joining in. I hope you have a good week. I'm going to end the broadcast.